want to talk about is money. Now, you can't really spend your whole life pursuing money. Money isn't the most important thing. It's not what you've always got to be thinking about. But you do need a few dollars in your pocket if you're going to have the kind of quality of life that you've always wanted to have, that you probably want to have. So there's a couple of things. The school is still out on the money of what's the best way to make it. This is how I see it, and this is not necessarily correct. This is not necessarily going to work, but this is what I think, so take it for what it's worth. There's basically 4 ways to accumulate wealth. You could inherit it. Now, if you're one of my children or grandchildren, that's probably not going to work out that well for you. But that is a way that some people, you will meet people throughout life, and you'll just, wow, they had rich parents. Like that's why they can do some of the things that they can do. They had wealth in the family. So there is that. You could be exceptional. So great wealth goes to those of exceptional quality. Could you be an exceptional person? No. When you think about exceptional, don't think, oh, the guy's a surgeon, he's a doctor, he's a surgeon. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real wealth, huge wealth. Like the basketball player Shaq used to say that he was rich, but the guy who signed his checks was wealthy. So wealth is different. So you could be exceptional and great wealth that way. So this isn't how most people get it. This is how NBA players and hockey stars and people who win Wimbledon tennis and things like that, they are exceptional, and therefore they acquire great wealth because of that exceptional ability. That's a good tactic if you're exceptional, but it's a hard tactic for the average guy. Most people aren't exceptional, not in the I'm a star of the NBA kind of genre of exceptional. Now, a third way is you could have an exceptional idea. Maybe you're an engineer and you come up with a better this or a better that. As they always said, if you could make a better mousetrap, the world would be a path to your door. But there are people who have acquired wealth because of their exceptional product or business. Bill Gates, one of the richest people in the world, he invented the software that runs all the computers. So there could be a group of people who have an exceptional idea. They write an exceptional book and they get great wealth from that. Again, it could happen to you. I hope it happens to you, but you can't really count on it because you're probably exceptional. We've been telling everybody how exceptional they are, but you might not be exceptional in the marketplace. So that brings me to a fourth way of generating wealth, and I remember I was at a camera store and talking to the owner. I'd known him for a long time, for decades, and an older gentleman came in and was chatting with him for a minute, and then the guy left. It didn't sound like the older guy spoke too much English. Certainly he had an Italian accent and spoke some English. So anyways, I was talking to the camera store owner, and he goes, oh, that's the guy who owns this store. He's the owner of the building, and I rent from him. In fact, he owns this whole plaza. In fact, he owns all the plazas up and down this street. And it made me think, well, here's a guy, he doesn't even speak the language. I mean, he probably speaks great Italian, but the native language in this area was English. He doesn't even speak the language, yet he's generated that huge wealth because these strips of plazas would be worth an absolute fortune. So it's possible without being exceptional to accumulate wealth. And I think the best way that I can see is through your assets and you owning property. If you think of how the wealthy became wealthy in years gone by, hundreds of years ago, they owned the land and they rented it to people. They might have been very fair landlords. There's no reason they wouldn't be, but probably they weren't. They probably gouged the people, but it's possible that they were fair. You could be fair. But I think the goal is to acquire some land that you can rent out. Now, as you're saving up and you don't have any land, you're renting an apartment or you're living at home, I think you have to have a bigger vision of what you can do. Maybe the goal, instead of getting your own place, would be to buy a place that you could rent out to someone. And you don't live there. Maybe you still live at home in a basement, or maybe you still are renting an apartment, but you're renting out to someone else. Now, remember these words: I don't have to live there. So if you're never going to live in this place that you purchase to rent out, it doesn't have to be downtown New York City. It doesn't have to be in a big city at all. All you could afford might be in 3 hours north of Toronto in a little town. You bought an apartment and you rent it out. You don't live there. You're never going to live there. You're renting it out. It's an opportunity to generate income and build asset and build some land. You're going to have to borrow the money from the bank and rent this place out. Now you might look at it as a weird idea. Hey, I'm still renting where I live and I've got a place that I rent out. Well, that's fine. You don't have to live there. The place that you're renting out doesn't have to have the latest gas stove and quartz countertops or marble countertops or gold-plated doorknobs, because you're never going to live there. You might want that in your own life, but it's just a rental. And I think when you have a full-time job, now we freelanced for a long time. So it was harder to get a loan when you're freelance because you don't really have the steady income that the banks like to see. But as soon as you get a full-time job, the banks are happy to lend you money and let you get a mortgage and purchase this rental property. Now you might have to tell the bank that you were planning to live there on the first one just to get it, but you could, once you have it, you're free to rent it out to someone else, change your mind. I mean, that's fair game. But, when you have a full-time job, the bank is happy to lend you money because they're going to make interest off of it. And I think if I could go back in time, it would have been great to have gotten one rental place, an inexpensive place. You're not looking for the Taj Mahal here on your first one. You're kind of looking for a place that's easy to rent and easy to maintain. And then maybe, you've got a full-time job, unrelated field, and after 5 or 6 years, maybe you've accumulated enough money to get a second one that you can rent out. And then, then maybe in 5 or 6 more years, you can acquire a third one to rent out. And you're building up your portfolio. It's kind of like your pension plan in a sense, but you're building up your portfolio with these rental units. They are a bit of work. You have to rent them out. You have to learn how to rent them out. You've got to learn how to find good clients. You've got to clean them up after these people move out and rent them to somebody else, and maybe there's a few months where it's empty and you got to carry it. All of that is true. But the goal, I think, is to end up with some of these properties. And there might be a point where you sold 2 or 3 of them off and you bought a better one to rent out. You don't have to sell them off to buy one to live in. The goal is to accumulate property. It's not to necessarily have them all paid off. In fact, you never really need to pay them off. You could, if you had a mortgage, someone else was going to pay that mortgage for 25 years, it would eventually be paid off. But if you were in the middle of the mortgage and you acquired a bunch of money, you would be richer in the end to acquire another unit with that extra money as compared to paying that one off. I think we're always we grew up wanting to have, paid for, pay your mortgage off, pay this off, no debt. Yeah, the debt kind of hangs around on your, like a millstone or a rock on your neck or a big weight that weighs you down. But you can get past that and you can realize that, if you have $1 million or $2 million in debt, but their property are worth 6 or 7 million, really, are you that far ahead or far behind? Are you that worried? Is it that bad? I mean, it could go south. You could get in over your head, but if you had a bunch of little, one bedroom and a den type apartments in different towns that you could rent out, it probably won't all go south at once. And owning the property, you can always sell it if it sours. You can always sell it and take the profits. The property seems to go up. We've been saying, I remember a TV show where the guy was trying to sell his house in Toronto and it was $2,000. And someone asked him if he wanted to invest in these homes, and he thought, no one thought that houses in Toronto could go up any higher than $2,000. Now they're $3 million. So certainly they do go up. If you can get a few, acquire them, low maintenance, easy to rent. You're not looking for 3 bedrooms. You're looking for apartments. Yeah, there'd be a condo fee or an apartment fee. That's part of it. But you're looking for stuff that's easy to rent, easy to maintain. No one's flooding the basement. You know, if you have a house and you rent out a house, when they're done renting it, the lawn's going to be toast, and I mean, it's just going to be dead everywhere. Renters don't necessarily take really great care often of the properties. So you're looking for low maintenance, easy to rent, 1 bedroom with a den, maybe a 2 bedroom, get started. Might not be downtown Montreal, might be the middle of nowhere, but at least you get in the door. Then when you go to the bank, after you've got 2 or 3, the banks, you know, if you've got 2 or 3 properties and your bank won't lend you money because you want to buy another one, just find another bank. There's a lot of banks. There's a lot of bank options. Go to a mortgage broker and say, hey, I've got 3 properties and I want to buy a 4th. They'll help you find the money. You'll get a good rate too, because people are looking. That's how you accumulate wealth. So this is kind of my conclusion on the wealth is get your assets working for you. It's going to take 35 years. So start now. If you don't have 35 years, then start now anyways, and maybe you never have them paid off. If you think of a property, it's going to be paid off in 25 years, but it'll almost be paid off in 20 years. And if you had to sell it, you might just, you know, someone else has paid the interest on your property for 20 years. It was never paid off, but you sold it, it was almost paid off, and you got to keep all the money. So that would be my advice. Get some properties, rent them out, learn how to rent them out so you don't have bad tenants, learn how to do it, understand the rules, the laws, and do it. And then my final thing about money is if you want to be rich, you've got to save some money. You've got to put it aside. I always told the kids, if you want to be rich, save 10%. If you want to be really rich, save 20%. If you want to be really, really rich, save 30%. That's a good tactic, but I think owning the homes is a better tactic, renting these properties out. Maybe you get a place and you have someone living in the basement. That helps pay the mortgage down. I think those are good tips. The final thing I wanted to say is about giving some of your money away. So there is a Christian biblical concept called the tithe, where you take 10% of your income and you give it away. And in theory, you would give it to the church, but in practice, it might not be the church that gets it all. And 10% is an ambitious goal, but it's a good goal, realistic goal, possible goal. But let's say you're going to give 10% away. Is there 10%? Can you give it to a local church? Can you give it to a hospital? Can you give it to the International Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders or some humanitarian group or some missionary group doing great work? Or can you donate it to someone just to share in your wealth, even though you might not be rich yet? Share in your wealth and good fortune and help other people have a better day. There's always going to be poor. You can never solve all the poor, but you can do a little bit. You can do something. You can do something positive. You can make a difference. So money's a funny thing. I got very little advice about money when I was growing up. So this is the advice that I would give. Try to get some properties that you can rent out. If you can't rent them out, or it's not going to work for you, or you're living in a different country every week, try to save 20 or 30% of your income and accumulate wealth that way. And give some away.